Hello, everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Adrian Emery. He's the author of a three-part series titled The Temple of Understanding, Volume 1 and 2. So, Volume 1 is Personal Sovereignty, A Journey to Freedom, and Volume 2, Doubt Tuning, The Art of Flow. So, the second one, Doubt Tuning, will be released on September 17th, just letting you know it now. And this will be the topic of our conversation today. So it has everything to do with flow. So, through his work, Adrian states that humanity has lost its way and suffers from a software virus that is blocking the free flow of cosmic creativity, inner joy, and unlimited energy that is our natural state. So, this is my brief introduction to you, Adrian. The full bio will be at the end. A question that I love asking, I would have too many questions here for you, but I love a question that for some reason I always ask everyone that never left me. How would you describe yourself in this very moment? Who is Adrian?
I like Adrian really to exist as little as possible. And I like to reside in what I call conscious awareness,
Yeah.
where there actually is no point, in meaning that the ego self, sees itself as this individual point, like a billiard ball in an atomic universe. And it has encapsulated or cut itself off with a shell, with an egoic shell, to be separated from all that is.
Mm.
I think the less that we can be preoccupied with ourself and who we are, and the more we are can exist within that expanded consciousness, then the happier and the more joyous we can be. So I don't tend to dwell too much on Adrian. I mean, he can be a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. But on the other hand, I like to be a conduit. I think I like to be an instrument. I like to be a messenger. And I like to be someone who is bringing a bit of hope, some sense, some understanding, and some wisdom to the geopolitical events that are happening on the world stage right now, because we live in very, very interesting and exciting spiritual times where I believe that we are about to go through a spiritual transformation of unprecedented significance in humanity's and Gaia's journey, not just human beings. We tend to become overly focused on us as a species, whereas we really need to realize that this is a universal transformation. It's something very important to Gaia, to the planet, and humanity is one part of that.
Right.
So that's who Adrian is.
Mm.
He's a philosopher.
Yes. It almost like gives us this transmission of being instead of trying to become something or someone or solidified that personality, our belief systems. That's what I feel every time I ask somebody the question. And then when I answer similar, when I hear similar answer, just something happens. I feel this connection of just being here. And I remember somebody actually saying that, I'm just here. I'm here. And that was it. Then there was silence.
So I call that being now.
Mm.
Um, and I thought I'd begin with your freedom to feel.
Yeah.
Now, Eric Fromm, who was a very famous philosopher and psychologist, he said that there are two freedoms that you need to be free from in order to be free to. So your title is Freedom to Feel. But in order to be
Yeah.
free
Yeah.
to feel, you have to be free from thinking, free from inhibition, free from resistance, free from this timidity of, oh no, and so you can't be locked in your brain. The freedom feelings are the language of the soul.
Yeah.
If you really want to know the truth for yourself, you're not going to get it cerebrally, neurologically via thinking. You actually have to sit with it with a gestalt of awareness, which is your gut feeling, you're coming from your heart, coming from your soul. And so it's a completely, I call it the language of life.
Right.
It's nonverbal, doesn't have words, it's a completely different reality, but it is so much more powerful. So I think we should start there, where if there was one bit of advice I would want to give people is trust your feelings.
Yeah.
If you need to really make an important decision or know what's going on, just sit with it. Stop thinking, go quiet, go within, and see how you feel about it.
Yeah. You said beautifully, you said consciousness exists with and without thought. I am conscious, therefore I exist. Thinking is not necessary to existence. Thinking is only one aspect of consciousness and a very limited part at that. I can exist without thinking, but I cannot think without being. So this was really interesting to see how precise it is. Like, you just to the point. It was, you just gave language to something that it was always here, but I couldn't have the words to express it. Yes, thinking is not necessarily to existence. How beautiful is that?
So I think it's really important, Valerie, to emphasize there that there are two types of thinking. And we shouldn't go, oh, don't think at all. Thinking is obviously a very,
Yeah,
very important part of being human, and thinking is a very, very important part of your spiritual growth and development. Also, we could not have this conversation on, via the technology if we didn't have thinking to know the time, how to turn things on,
right.
how to communicate. So, thinking is incredibly important with the to do list to become a functional being on planet Earth, but it is not the be all and end all of consciousness. And that quote that you just read out, I was really talking about Rene Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And I think he put the cart before the horse. It is completely the other way around. I am, therefore I can think.
Mm,
But unfortunately, and it's a huge part of the paradigm that we live in, so you had Isaac Newton, Rene Descartes, and Francis Bacon, who were really the fathers and the creators of this paradigm, this Western, this rationalist worldview, where thinking, logic, rationality, everything had to be proven, and where the thinking part of the human system took over, ran out of control, and so now we have just become human thinkings, human doings. We're not human beings. So the
right.
mind, the thinking mind, what I call the yama yama. And if all you need to do, I say this to everyone, all you really need to do is stop and watch your mind. It is literally insane. And it literally just goes over and over the same loops over and over again. The things that you fear, the things that you believe, the things that you think every day, all day, however old you are, you've been doing it for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It doesn't really change that much. So
Right.
for me, the most important thing is to learn to what I call being now. So by being now, we need to understand that you have the intersection point of time and space is now. And it's a door, it's a portal to eternity, the eternal now. And when you go through that door, when you go through that portal and exist in that point of now, everything changes because there is no past, there is no future. And so I've coined this thing called the IP address. As we know, every single device has an IP address.
Yeah.
And I think every single being has an IP address, which is your inner personal address, just like you have a residential address. And so I like to ask people, where do you live? Where do you reside? And most people either reside in the past or in the future or somewhere else where they're not. In other words, the grass is always greener syndrome. So your IP address, your inner personal address, needs to be
Mm,
now, here. And to have power, to have agency, to be able to manifest, you can only do that from what I call the plane of being. If you are constantly thinking, if your mind is churning, if you're going around and around in this insane story that we all have, and interesting, let's just go back to your first question about who is Adrian. Unfortunately, most of us believe our story.
Yeah.
And if you ask that question at a dinner party, who are you? Oh, well, I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a mother, or I'm a this, or I'm that. No, that's just a role that you are playing, you know? And those roles will change over time. You know, you'll be a child and a sister or a daughter or a son or a brother, and then you'll be a mother, and then
Yes.
in my case now I'm an elder. So hopefully one's roles in life change, but who we are at our core, which is our essence, which is the I am, doesn't change, and that has nothing to do with thinking. So thinking is important, is an integral component,
Right.
but the problem is that we have lost control of the on-off switch. So thinking is now jammed on. It's yammer yammer going full blast all day, every day, and we are always going somewhere, doing something, busy, haste, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Instead of being able to just stop the thinking, stop the doing, and be.
Yes. 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 A billion times to that truth. And what's not to love about that? And I wish for everyone to experience that this state of just being here, being present. There's so much, for me, gratitude and appreciation arise, joy arise. It's interesting. It's not something that we pursue. So I just ended the pursuit of happiness or joy or peace or anything like that. All I have to do is to stay here. And then they just arise. It's just amazing. It feels very fresh too, like something I never done before, the body mind never felt. It's really fresh.
When you are thinking, there is usually an ulterior motive.
Right,
So if we
right.
look at be, do, have, most of us are focused on having, and we do in order to get. The ego always does in order to get. It always wants something from the world. And so there's no innocence, there's no purity, there's no, the ego's out. The ego is a very grasping thing.
Right.
Um, so and I love what you just said about gratitude, because when you can stop and go into this state of being, into this state of innocence, as you say, joy naturally arises. Because when you stop, your perception, the doors of perception completely open, completely change, and you cannot help but be in awe and wonder of the beauty of life, of the beauty of nature.
Yes.
And as you say, you don't have to discipline yourself to be thankful or joyous or grateful. This immense gratitude and love of life, just, I call it a fountain. It's like this fountain just swells up from within you, from your heart and your breast, and it's like,
Right.
but you're not doing it consciously. It's not a spiritual exercise, it's not a religion, or it's just like this unbelievable appreciation. And from that gratitude, then the universe wants to give you more. And that, I think, is such an important key, is that people who want more, the ego, as I said, is always grasping,
Right.
but it's always dwelling on the negative. It's always complaining about what it hasn't got. So the universe says, well, I'm not giving you any more. Whereas when you're grateful and appreciative and just love every minute of life, the universe says, oh, well, here, have some more. So it's a very interesting dynamic that humans have got the wrong way round. So instead of starting with having, we need to start with being. So if I
Yes.
want more love in my life, I need to be loving. If I want more wealth in my life, I need to be wealthier in my generosity of spirit, in my graciousness, in what I'm giving to other people. If I want more powerful, so one of my most favorite sayings, and I do this a lot in my mind, is going, I am that I am. So I am the love that I am. I am the power
Yeah.
that I am. I am the goodness that I am. And you can always turn that up, so I can be more loving. I can be more generous. I can be more whatever it is that I want to be, say, focusing for me at the moment, it's about being clear. So I am the clarity that I am. I am the articulateness that I am. And you can put anything in there that you want, but really focus on
Right.
understanding that you must be it first, I guess.
Right. Right. So I was curious about what initiated you into this path of conscious living, of conscious expression, of spiritual living, and all these greatness that I can clearly see.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. And a lot of people, do you know what the road to Damascus experience means? So Saul was this, Roman soldier who was going around executing Christians, and on the road to Damascus, he
Right.
supposedly had this, you know, aha, spiritual experience for 3 days of blinding light and became St. Paul. So a lot of people in the spiritual world talk about their Damascus experience when they changed from this to that. That never happened to me. Um, I've been this way since I was born. As a very, very, very young child, I'm talking about 3 or 4.
Right.
I just had this sense and understanding of that the way the world was, meaning the Western world, was wrong, and that I needed to figure out a better way. And I understood that if you wanted to make a better car, you had to learn how to make a car. You had to learn how cars were made in order to make a better car, like Elon Musk. So I set myself about, and I remember very, very, as I said, just very young child, looking at all of my parents' friends.
Uh,
And I wasn't being critical or anything. I was trying to find somebody that I could emulate, or or a person or a lifestyle that I thought made sense. And I couldn't. So I started studying every philosophy, every religion, every cosmology, and I realized at a very early age that if I was an ancient Roman or an ancient Persian or an Inca,
right.
I would have a very different understanding of reality than the Judeo Christian Western world that we live in. So I realized that it was all a construct very early on. And then I thought, right, I need to devote myself to really understanding what life is all about, how it works, what are its rules, um, what are the
Yeah.
principles, etc. And so that's what I did. So it never really I never really changed from something else to who I am now. The way I am now is, but it has evolved. I mean, I've spent, I'm 70 odd. I've spent certainly 70 years studying, honing, perfecting, understanding, and I still consider I'm a novice.
Yeah.
I still consider that I am only touching the tip, because it's like this bottomless, beautiful lake. I won't say pit because it's such a beautiful thing, but it's like the more I learn, the more I start to appreciate the beauty and the.
Yeah.
Uh, I like to use the word tapestry, I suppose, the complexity, not in a confusing sense, but it's the most exquisite montage or collage. Life is really unbelievable when you get past this yammer yammer humdrum focused on pettiness. It's unbelievable how beautiful it is, and the depth of it.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, it's very simple. It's very, very exquisite and simple. It's like a really beautiful tapestry. The picture is amazing, but I think life is very simple, and I think life is very clear. All you need to do is look at it, and you know, uh, life reveals her secrets to us. They're hiding in plain sight, as you said a minute ago. It's there. It's always been
Yeah.
there. All we really need to look. You
Yes.
don't have to go away to a cave or a monastery or retreat from life or become a monk or reject or abstain. What you really need to do is engage with life. And this is where this freedom to feel comes in, because if you're afraid, then you can't engage, you can't feel. And look, and Even one of the things that I'm learning myself right now at this ripe old age is to be bold,
Yeah.
you know, to be emboldened to enjoy every moment and to shout and to be happy and to be exuberant, not to be timid, not to be coward.
Yes. It's giving yourself to life, isn't it, Adrian?
Yeah,
That's what it sounds to me. Just
yeah,
really, I heard that from somebody that I interviewed. She said that so many times. We need to give ourselves to life.
yeah.
And that means we're giving ourselves to death, to creativity, to whatever happens in the moment and how it happens.
Yeah, I like to say that we need to develop a partnership. Like there are two gifts. The first gift is life.
Yeah.
The second gift is free will choice. And life is a blank canvas. You have been given this life and you have been given this free will, which is where thinking comes in, to paint, to create whatever it is that you want to create. And the thing most people don't realize is that they are creating. They are already creating it. You are either creating it consciously with conscious awareness or unconsciously through fear and through ignorance, but you are creating it. So you need to develop this. I like to say that
Yeah.
you need to look at your life as a business. Okay. So and if you've been an entrepreneur, you have a business plan, you have a goal. We are flowing in this conversation, but we are trying to stick to the topic. So life is exactly the same. You need to have some sort of sense, and that's why I call it dial tuning. You need to have a sense of your destiny. You need to have a sense of your purpose. You need to find your ikigai, and you need to develop this business partnership with your life and really work on that, really hone on that. So you're constantly fine tuning, which is where the word tuning comes in. So that I'm wanting to make my life better, more harmonious, more successful, happier, more joyous, more pleasing. I think that's what we all want. We all want to be happy.
Right.
We all want to be successful. And I don't care how you define success. I define success as just being achieving in your life whatever it is that you want to achieve. You don't need to be it doesn't need to be fame and fortune and power and all of that stuff. It can be very, very humble. Nobody needs to know, but you need to know what success means to you. You need to know what happiness means to you.
Right.
And that's where the word flow comes in, because at the end of the day, we all want our lives to work. So there's a functionality there. You know, we know when our phones work, we know when our cars work, we know when I say you don't hop on your vacuum cleaner and expect to fly around the world, because it's not fit for
Yes.
purpose. It's not the design. So life has its own design, and we need to know what it is that we want to achieve. We all know when our lives work. We all know when our lives are not working. We all know when we're in the flow. We all know when we're out of the flow. So my personal
Yeah.
goal is that I want to spend as much time in what I call the zone of flow as possible, not limited to some peak experience of, athletics or, climbing a rock face or, some extreme situation. I believe that being in the zone of flow is our birthright. It's where we need to live. Because look, it really doesn't make sense that God, or whatever word you want to call it, would give us this gift of life and then make life difficult.
Right.
That to me is illogical. If I'm going to give somebody a gift and I'm really giving that gift with love, then I want that gift to be a source of joy.
Right.
No? If you think about it, when if you really love someone, you want to give them a gift, you think about what would this person really like? What would they enjoy? You don't go, what would I want to give them? That's not really giving a gift. That's a manipulative ploy. But if you think, well, I know that person, I know he or she really likes X, therefore I'm going to give something around X, whatever it is, to
Right.
enhance that person's life. So I believe that the divine principle has given us this most sacred gift of life to enjoy. not to be a trial, not to be a suffering, not some purgatory that we need to work through in order to get somewhere else. So I believe that life is a blessing, and life is abundant, and life is a joyous exploration of who we are.
Yes. 'Cause every time I think about the idea of, what's happening, I've been asking the question since I was very young. What is this, which we call life? What am I doing here? All these big questions I've been asking since I was a child. And I never really found clear answer because it was just everything was just so much systematic. The natural world, for example, there are so many laws, as you said. We have to understand how life works. And that we're speaking of science and then, cause and effect and all that. But then at some point, you don't even know if it is cause and effect and how did we get here. And that really, no one can really explain that, how this happened in the very beginning. I mean, we have theories, but we really don't know. So I love the mystery and I love the concept of love. So I guess something that puts me on the flow too, besides being in the moment, has to do with being in love. So there's something about that. It kind of guides me, has been guiding me for since I was very little. If I can kind of navigate this reality with openness, with this concept of love, always embracing others and myself, then things work. And that has been the truth for me. Every time I'm open hearted and I just kind of embrace everything as it is without pushing anything away. Interesting. It's like magic happens. Like, oh, it's working. And I thought this could never work. And then it does.
Yeah, but see, that's my point. That's what I was saying before, that that feeling of when your life is working is so it's unbelievable, isn't it? It's like it's almost like an affirmation of who you are. Yes, this is working. This is happening. I'm on my path. It's a very, very empowering feeling, not in an egotistical sense, but in a very humble sense and in
Right.
a very joyous sense. To me, it's like riding a horse. It's and that's exactly why I called it tuning. You're on the wave. You can feel the wave. You can feel this wave carrying you along. And as you say, it's just like, oh, this is working. Great. Well, let's keep going. We also know when we get dumped or it doesn't work. So let me just wind back a little bit to where you started, which was, the why of, and I have created this phrase. I thought about it a lot. And so for me, the purpose of life is to express our divinity. you know so we think that, oh, my life purpose is to be this whatever author or teacher or doctor. No, the purpose of life is to express your own divinity, to express your beingness. Now, moving on, there's a very famous in one of John Lennon's songs. He says, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. Now, your first
Yes.
question to me
Okay.
was, who is Adrian? And I have found that every time Adrian gets in the way, meaning I think I want to do X, it doesn't work. But when I get myself out of the way, and as you say, just come from your heart, experience that love, let it be, let it flow, back to the Beatles, then it's almost like, oh, all of a sudden
Yeah.
the wave is there carrying you along, and you go, oh, this is good. But, when I look back at my life, as I said, I had really no uh, ego or conscious intention of any of the things that I have achieved, and I have achieved a lot and done a lot in my life. But it was only when I got myself out of the way and allowed the wave, and look, that takes a lot of discipline, a lot of humility, and a lot of obedience, because sometimes that wave is not necessarily going to take you where you really wanted to
Mm.
go, or alternatively, that wave is going to ask you to say things or do things or be things that are definitely are fearful and challenging. It's not like, oh yeah, a lot of people think It's all about, go with the flow, man. It's peace, love, and all. No,
Right.
it doesn't work like that. There are you are there are always challenges. There are always things that you need to meet. The challenges that you meet, that you need to grow and become a bigger person in yourself to get there. And it's only when you look back and go, then I can see all the stepping stones that I had to actually go through to climb that mountain. So just one last thing before I finished on that. You also spoke about when
Oh,
when
yeah.
you when you come from love, and we know that love and fear are the opposite. So the freedom to feel, which I said before, is the freedom from fear. And we need to define the word love, because most people interpret love as a romantic or love of something. In other words, there's an object. But to me, love is a state of being, and the purest love doesn't actually have any object. It's not an objectified thing. It's a state of being within which we just feel this immensity. But look, by the same token, when you're in that state of love, you really don't want to injure, and you want goodness, and you want to give, and you want to be generous. But it's not, because if my love is dependent upon or comes from a person or some object, then I'm dependent
Right.
upon that object. And if I lose that object, then I will lose that sense of love. If love is a sense of being, going to what I was talking about before with be do have, is my if my beingness is love, I will be loving, I will be giving, and I will have love come back in my life.
Yes. It might be that state of flow, right, Adrian? So being in love with life itself and flow, are they all connected?
I think they're all the same thing.
Yeah.
I think they're like a prism. You see, one of the things that I have learned, and I think this is that the label or the map is not the territory. So just visualize for a minute that we're going to go on a journey, and we've got this map. Let's say we're going to go for a walk through
Yeah.
a wild bush somewhere. So we've got a map, or we've got a GPS in our car or whatever, but that map is not the territory, and the word is not the thing, and a label is not the experience. So we get too hung up in words.
Yeah.
But when you get to this state of beingness and going back to love, it's like, well, at the end of the day, you just can't put a word on it, because as soon as you try to put a label on it, you're back in your mind, you're back in thinking, and you've disconnected. So whether we call it the flow, whether we call it the Tao, whether we call it God, whether we call it love, whether we call it being, look, these are very feeble attempts
Yes.
by the human mind to understand and grasp with things or concepts or states that are much, 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 much bigger. And so we're looking through a tiny little peephole, or you imagine, looking through a keyhole in a door, outside a door, into a really beautiful vista. You actually have to open the door and walk out
Yeah.
to experience the wonder and the joy. So it goes back to this thinking. Turn off the mind, stop the thinking, stop trying to put labels on everything, and understand it with your mind, and just understand it and experience it with your heart. As you said, your heart will naturally go to gratitude, will naturally go to joy, will naturally go to love, and so you will exist within a completely different reality. Not But you can't get there
Yeah.
via your mind. You cannot think yourself to enlightenment. You cannot think yourself to success. You can use positive affirmations, but if you haven't processed the emotional baggage, the affirmations are not going to work. So that's again where the experience and the feeling. So to me, experience and feeling are very, very closely aligned. The freedom to feel is the freedom to experience, is the freedom to know, right? How do we really know something? By experiencing it, by being it. You can intellectually
Right.
know something, but you can't really viscerally know it unless you experience it. And that experience is not an intellectual thing. It's not an intellectual experience. It's a visceral is probably the only really word. I mean, feeling is because feelings are in your body. Feelings, and as I said before, feelings are the language of the soul.
Yeah.
If you feel something, then that is your soul talking to you, right? And as you said before, when that flow comes and that exuberance, that joy, that feeling of, it's a very uplifting. As I said, it's like a fountain. It's like levitating. you know, when you feel depressed,
Yeah.
and you know that the number one pandemic in the world today, as declared by WHO, is loneliness, depression. Mental illness is huge. Mental illness is just this weight, this oppression, this because of all the manipulations that are going on the planet today with the powers and everything. People are feeling
Yes.
repressed, oppressed, depressed, and so it's very hard for them to shake all that off and really experience joy. Fit for joy, freedom
Yes.
to feel, that's the answer.
Yes. They're all concepts, like you said beautifully. Yes. You would look at it, they're words, but you know, they come from experience. That's exactly what I experienced. The fit for joy idea, that was so clear to me when the insight came. I'm already fit for joy. I'm already perfect, complete, and whole to be joyful right here, right now. So I didn't have to wait for something to happen.
Yeah, you don't need somebody else, whether that's a god or a priest or a guru, or nobody else needs to come along and say,
Yeah.
it's okay for you to be joyous or it's okay for you to be you. No, you have to give yourself permission. You have to empower yourself. You have to
Right.
throw away the shackles. As I said before, freedom to feel means freedom from timidity, freedom from fear. And you are the only person. In other words, there are shackles on most people. There is no doubt about that. But you
Yes.
have the key. You can unshackle yourself. You can be free. You can experience whatever it is that you want to experience right now.
Yes. What's happening now, as you mentioned earlier, in the United States, especially with this, the agenda of control and fear, what do they gain from that besides, power, money, and all those things? But these people are not aware of spiritual realities. I just kind of, it surprises me because we all have within ourselves, we know that we are not just human beings, we're spiritual beings as well. But I'm just wondering what your take is on that. They don't have those insights ever?
My take is that it's the power of addiction.
Yeah.
Now, as I said before, the ego is a very grasping, accumulative thing. Now, one of my favorite sayings is more is never enough. I mean, we have these billionaires, multi billionaires on the planet who need more money. We have these elite who want to
Ah,
control the whole world. They have so much power, they need more power. It's like any addiction, any drug addict, sex addict, whatever addiction is, more is never enough. You will always need more. You will always need a bigger hit. You will always need more money. You will always need more power
right.
because they are just encapsulated within that addiction. So, no, they can't really see and be free to feel because they have just become so obsessed in this narrow tunnel of we want world domination. We want to conquer the world. All of this is purely being orchestrated to, yeah, to it,
Ah,
they want to go back to a feudal system whereby we are economic serfs. Yes, we will have our televisions and our cars. World Economic Forum has said by 2030, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. Thank you very much, sir. You're allowing me to be happy. You're telling me that I will be happy. Well, you can't do that. I can only be happy myself.
Right.
But you will own nothing and you will be happy is their mantra. Oh, okay. Who is going to own everything? Well, we're going to own everything and we're going to rent it to you. I mean, it's so hypocritical. If we look at what's happening today in the United States today, where, you know, you have to compare, whether you like it or not, the Democratic Party with the CCP,
Yes.
because the Democratic Party has just implanted, unelected, a new person to be, nominated for the president of the United States without any democratic process whatsoever. So there is no difference. There is no difference between a totalitarian
Right.
regime party that says, "Okay, we're nominating this person or we're putting this person in." If they really want to be honest, in the Democratic Party, and yet and I'm not political, I'm not partisan at all, but you need to be able to think critically. There are times when you need to use thinking, and this is one where you cannot be fooled. Mass and social media are 100% designed to turn us into clones, this false narrative to lull us
Ah,
back into sleep. So I don't think that you can say that everybody is spiritually enlightened, because some people, the addiction, I mean, why would somebody want to overdose? And when I say more is never enough, you only need to look at the celebrity world. How many very famous, successful artists, film stars, people who
yeah.
from outside would seem to have everything? Because if you're a great singer, and we all know many of them who have committed suicide or overdosed on drugs, you have this unbelievable gift, this gift of joy to be able to stand in front of tens of thousands of people and bring them joy by your voice, by your singing, by your message, and have that acclaim, have that wonderful experience, and then go and die of an overdose or commit suicide. So that's why I'm saying more is never enough unless you are coming from this state
Mm,
of being where I just want to sing for the pure joy of singing, because I want to give happiness and joy to other people. So, sorry, to come back to your question. No, I don't, because that we need, and we don't have time today. But personal sovereignty, the book one in the Temple of Understanding, goes into a lot of detail about the negative ego. We need to understand how the negative ego. Now, there is nothing wrong with the ego. The ego is a necessary part of being a human being. The ego is the thing
right.
that is the pilot, so to speak, of being on planet Earth. In other words, the ego is the thing that processes the data that comes in via your five senses and tells you you're in danger. Put your finger in the fire. Your ego is the thing that tells you that that's going to burn. There's nothing wrong with the ego. But the ego has become sick. The ego has become negative. And very briefly, the ego has usurped control of what I call the corporate structure of consciousness. And the ego, the negative ego, is the thing that is thinking all the time.
Right.
Now, we all know, and that's where mental illness comes from. We all know, and I'm sure we've all experienced, when we're in that yama yama of the brain and it just becomes so illogical, so insane, so stupid. But you need to be able to step back and observe it to become the observer. I don't believe that these people can do that. They are so obsessed with power, money, greed, domination. It's it's just a force. But we live in the world of plurality. We have to have yin and yang. We have to have joy and happiness. We have to have
Yes.
sorrow and love. We have to have greed and generosity. That is just a plane of duality. That is how, and tuning goes into this a lot, that you need. So if you think of a battery in a car, or any of our devices. A battery must have a positive and negative terminal. Procreation must have male and female, putting pipes together. Everything needs yin and yang. Without that polarity, the universe would stop. So, this
Mm.
is where Christ said, turn the other cheek. There is no point in judging these people. There is no point in making them wrong or telling them they're evil. It's just a polarity, you know. And once we transcend that plane of duality and that polarity and see it for what it, I love it. As I said, it's better than any TV soap opera. I watch it every day. I read all about it today. I've read this morning before our conversation, what are the Democrats doing next? And it's like, it is such a fun story when you have the bigger cosmic perspective, which is they're going to lose anyway. Don't even. I'm not talking about Democrats. I'm talking about the elite. The elite is not going to get control of the planet.
Mm.
The spiritual world is, because we are going to go through this massive paradigm shift where we will enter a different world. But just to conclude, I'll give you a really good example. Yesterday evening, I was weeding my vegetable garden.
Yeah.
Now, because the weeds were just about to go to seed, it's winter, it's dormant. But I walked in there and I went, oh my God, everything's just about to go to seed. I had to very, very quickly. That weeding process was pretty destructive to those weeds, even slightly destructive to the worms, although I tried to avoid them as much as possible.
Yeah.
But you cannot have creation without destruction. You cannot get to freedom to feel unless you move away from freedom from fear. So we are just going through the weeding destructive process. The Western paradigm has to collapse before the new world can be. Look, I'm not going to go and plant seeds,
Right.
vegetables, in that vegetable garden with all those weeds, because the weeds are going to dominate and take over. So it just so happens that right now we're in a pretty dark space. The weeds on the planet are in control, but that's okay. It will pass. We'll pull all the weeds out, but it is vitally important, and this would be my main message in conclusion to everybody, that people now need to make a decision. People need to, every single individual on the planet has to make a decision. What side am I on? And you can't make any excuses. Oh, well, when I get my life together, then I'll be spiritual. When I get enough money, then I will be spiritual. When my kids grow up, then I
Yeah.
will be spiritual. No, you need to make the decision right now that you are going to be authentic, that you are going to be free to feel, that you are going to be fit for joy, that you are going to live in love, that you are going to flow. And Dao tuning is a manual on teaching people everything they need to know how to flow, because being in the flow is being an instrument of
Yeah.
God. That's the end of the story. There is nothing else. And when you're in the flow, you are not going to injure, you're not going to pollute, you're not going to buy that plastic bag. You're not going to do any of the tiny little things that all add up. You're going to be a spiritual warrior. You're going to light your own candle. You're going to spread light in the world. And it's the 100th monkey. It's just more and more people need to get on the other end of the seesaw, so that we are all becoming. And that doesn't mean you got to go out and protest. I'm not one for believing in protest or violence or anything like that.
Right.
All you need to do, it can be very humble. Nobody needs to know about it. You don't have to go out and wave a flag or join Greenpeace. What you do need to do is to be very quiet, very sincere, very even serious about it in the decision that you make to be a a conduit of light. I think that's probably the best way to
Yeah.
put it. To just be a conduit of light, to bring light to the planet, to bring joy, to bring peace, to bring understanding, to bring harmony. So I call the new paradigm it singularity, and in that new paradigm, we will understand and appreciate the oneness of life, the singularity of life, that all life is sacred, all
Right.
life forms are sacred, that no life form, not a human, tree, humans are not better or more important or have the right to go and destroy the earth. We need to become very humble. We need to become one with life and to really appreciate the sanctity, the oneness, the singularity of the whole thing. And then we're free. Then we are free to feel because we're not dominated by this fear of nature or this fear of the devil or this fear of badness or this fear of all these negative things that we're so afraid of, rather than just realizing that they're just phantoms, they're shimmerers, they're illusions
Yes.
that we have created. You know, it's like a little child waking up in the middle of the night being afraid of the dark. And, you know, the parent comes in, turns the light on, quietens them down. That's really, all that is happening right now is that there is a lot of, again, going back to flow, there is a wave of energy hitting planet Earth that is
Yeah.
creating this change, creating this spiritual transformation, awakening the planet, awakening humanity, uh, feeding us, you and me, and millions of other people, and going, okay, it's time. You know that I think that's my message. It is time. It is time for all the light workers to start living your presence, to start being real. One of my favorite sayings is, have the guts to join the dots, see what is going on. Don't be misled by the misinformation, the false narrative, the drama, the spectacle, the crap. Have the guts to join the dots, to see clearly what is happening, and to make an absolute sovereign decision. Which side are you on? If you go back to evolution, survival of the fittest is always there's always a few members
Right.
of any species that have the correct genome. The difference is that now evolution is no longer happening physiologically. It's not like we're going to change physically into another species. Evolution is now happening on the level of consciousness. So
Right.
the humans whose consciousness is evolving and changing to a new, more holistic, more embracive, more, as I'm using the word singular, a singularity, then that is the consciousness that will evolve into the next paradigm.
Right. You mentioned addiction before. So many people are, some of them are confused because they're not coming from their own hearts and they are not really being sovereign. But we see the addiction, and then see people just doing, they're addicted to greed and all those things. So what will happen to them? I'm just wondering if when this shift takes place, where our reality, it's a lot more spiritual in a sense of one with life. What would happen? What would it need to happen to these people? Would they transform into clear beings? That would they go? Would they kind of get enlightened, or well, I wonder what. Do you have a vision for that?
Oh, that's a very big question, and I have thought about it a lot and tried to understand it, and
Yeah.
also studied it a lot via many channeled works, because a lot of the channeled entities talk about this. So I have read uh, a fair bit about it. My understanding is that, and I guess you've now got to really transcend the limitation of being a human being, a life on Earth. So there are 7 billion odd of us. There doesn't really need to be 7 billion people on planet Earth.
Right.
I foresee a much less number of human beings on planet Earth. But that doesn't mean either that those people who are no longer here cease to be. We have to get over this fear of death. That to me is the biggest fear from that we have to get over. You know, they're going to continue. It's just that they're not going to be allowed to be on planet Earth,
Yes.
right? So once we go through this transformation and we are live in this world of singularity where we are really honoring Gaia, we are really understanding the planet, we are really honoring all of the life forms and nature and the beauty of nature and all that, and the planet transforms. It just won't be a place where many souls will be allowed to incarnate because it won't be appropriate for their vibration. So there may be 2 billion people, there may be less people on the planet. I don't think that 7 billion people are all of a sudden going to be enlightened, because that will deprive
Right.
them of their free will. You see, the beauty, as I said before at the very beginning, there are two gifts. The first gift is life. The second gift is free will. If I want to be malevolent, if I want to be negative, if I choose greed, if I choose power, God, whoever you want to call it, is not going to take that choice away from me, because then that's not free will. So I need to be allowed to go on with my evolutionary journey somewhere else in the universe that will be the dumping ground for those people to go and play
Right.
their games somewhere else. But my understanding is they will not be allowed to incarnate and do so on planet Earth, because Gaia is going through her evolution. This is not just about humanity. This is about Gaia and her journey, which is why the return of the goddess, femininity, all of this stuff is happening because the patriarchal society and the dominance of the male and the yang energy for so long is dissipating, and the feminine energy, the goddess, is returning and coming in. So it's going to be a completely different.
Yeah.
And look, I know we're running out of time, but in terms of this paradigm, just to finish, the one thing that we really need to understand is that 500 years ago, when the colonists went around the world and under the guise of Christianity, they dominated every other worldview that was feminine, that was spiritual, that was pagan, that was holistic, and they eliminated them all. Whether we look at the Incas or the American Indians or the Australian Aborigines or wherever the Western world went, it deliberately and methodically raped and destroyed any other paradigm, because they needed to do that to protect this one and only paradigm that was allowed to exist, which was the rationalist, scientific thinking, dominating Western male worldview.
Right.
What we're going through at the moment with this inclusion and all of this, there's a lot of nonsense. That's just as exclusive as anybody else. I was reading this morning where the lady who just resigned, the head of the Secret Service, you know, and that particular article was about that they have a mandate to to have 30% women within their, and it's saying that's just another ism. It's just another thing. So sorry, I'm raving on a little bit here, but the point is that once we go through this paradigm, you will still have a choice, but the choice is that the earth consciousness and human consciousness will be a particular way. Do I willingly and freely join in that? And that's why I'm saying to people now, it is very, very important. If you want to, you don't have to. But if you love being human, if you love being on planet Earth, if you love all these things, make the choice now, because it might be too late. And I'm not, the second part to your question, and I say this a lot in my writing, evolution happens very quickly. The dinosaurs supposedly became extinct in an afternoon. There is nothing to say it can't happen like that tomorrow, you
That's
know?
true. Yeah.
And there's also nothing to say, because we do have free will, and to awaken, that there isn't going to be another nuclear bomb, because humanity, unfortunately, is going to need a pretty loud noise to wake up. I don't think it's just going to be more of the same. I think we need to going to go through some pretty drastic turmoil and strife for us to realize, hey, we just can't keep polluting and dominating and desecrating and creating these wars. I mean, unfortunately, the war is just going on everywhere now. I mean, it's easy for us sitting in a Western uh, world with very comfortable and very nice, thank you very much, and everything we want, very affluent. I mean, I have created 10-acre garden. I live in absolute Garden of Eden, but I know that there are many people on the planet,
Yeah.
and it's not just um, Gaza or the Ukraine. I mean, if you read the list of countries that are at some form of war, it's not just between the empires of China and America or NATO and Russia. It is many, many civil wars, many, many sort of little tribal, even in Papua New Guinea, which is a very small country near us, have a war. You know what I mean? It's just a human predicament that we seem intent on killing each other. So until we get to that consciousness of do not injure, that is probably the only law I can think of that really is a law, which is do not injure. Um, I think that we will have to go through the eye of the storm. In my website, I mean, the first thing I say, the wave of change is upon us. We're going through the eye of the
Yeah.
storm now. That's what the American election is all about. Um, how violent it becomes is again up to individual consciousness. That it is why it's so urgent that millions and millions and millions of us create peace, because we can change the world. We are changing the world. So there are warmongers and there are peace lovers, as we, you and I, and the people that we are talking to, as we affirm
Yeah.
peace, said you don't need to go out and protest, you don't need to join Greenpeace, you don't need to go on a political demonstration, you don't need to do anything externally, but you need to be within your heart and soul at peace. You need to affirm peace. As said, you need to come from love. And then by the 100th monkey, by the balance of the scales, if enough human beings are choosing that, then we are creating that. So a lot of people think that this is all
Yeah.
predetermined by God or the devil. It's absolute rubbish. We are sovereign beings. As a species, we will determine what is going to happen and how it is going to happen. The one thing we can't change is that we're going to go through this transformation. We are going to go through this spiritual transformation. What we do have the power is, will it be violent? Will it be destructive? Or will it be nice and peaceful? We, meaning humanity, individually, collectively, as a species, will choose and decide that. That's why I'm doing what I am doing, because I believe that it is very urgent now for as many individual human beings as possible to go, I choose peace. I choose love. I don't care whether you believe in God or not. I don't care whether you believe in whatever you believe in. It is irrelevant. We all know the difference between love and hate. We all know the difference between generosity and greed. We all know the difference between good and bad. We all know the difference between honoring and being true to ourselves and betraying ourselves. We all know what is right for us, and I'm not going to tell anybody what is right for them. But as an individual being, what I'm saying in personal sovereignty and tuning, which I'll just show people the book so they can keep their eyes open for it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
is that
Beautiful.
you know the truth. The truth is within you. As you adhere, obey, listen, and act upon that truth, you become a messenger, you become a conduit, you are in the flow, and you create this vortex of energy that is an antidote,
Yeah.
so to speak, for the violence, for the hatred, for the greed, for the killing, all of that stuff. It's fine. You don't even need to go there. You don't even need to think about it. You just need to know that it is there. You don't become afraid of it. You don't become a survivalist and, you know, although I think I think you should be prepared, but I don't think you should give in to fear, because what you fear you attract, right?
Yeah,
What you fear, what you if you're afraid, of the end days and all that, then that is what. Now, just to come back to your question, I think that um, no, there cannot be a mass awakening of humanity, because, as I said before, that would then interfere in individual free will. I think that each
right.
individual person, one of the things that I like to say is that think about crossing a very turbulent mountain stream and you're going across rocks. You don't do that holding hands, right?
That's true.
You got to do that on your own, because if you're holding hands, you'll both fall in the water. So, to go through this spiritual transition, to go through this spiritual transformation, you have to do it alone. In other words, you have to make your own sovereign decision. You have to become the best person that you can be, and then turn around and be a light, then turn around and be an example, and hopefully encourage others to make their crossing. But it's like what you and I were talking about before we went on air. You can't save anyone. You can't be a savior. You
Mm,
can't be a messiah. You can't be a guru. All you can do is be yourself, express your own divinity, and hopefully be a light and a beacon to other people to, be their best.
yes, yeah. That's the way that we prepare for this transformation, my Adrian, by making that being aware of the choice that we have. Is that what I just said? Is that accurate? Did I understand that clearly about just knowing, being aware of the choice that we have, the options of fear and love? Because it seems like most people don't know that they have a choice.
Yeah, I guess knowing when you're in fear is a pretty important thing, because
Yeah,
unfortunately, when fear takes over, and we've all been there. I mean, we all feel that constriction. We all feel that anxiety. We all feel that almost having to fight. When you're in fear, you want to fight back.
yeah,
But I think it's for me, and I know we're running out of time, but we maybe could do a whole session on this, because it's a very important topic. Is you've got to learn to recognize your first steps.
yeah,
So I like to use the analogy that you're down the beach, it's a beautiful sunny day, and you can see the storm clouds out to sea. You don't just lie there and wait. It's time to go. So we need to know, and each and every human being, and as I said before, I've done a lot of counseling in my life. Every single human being
right.
has their own steps before they get to the crescendo. So and to try and disarm fear, you need to recognize step one, because there's no good trying to turn it off when it's at step seven. Then you're in the midst of this, turbulence within your mind. It's too late. So you need to recognize, and three things: where is it in my body? How does it feel in my body? Is it in my gut? Is it in my solar plexus? Is it in my heart? Where do I feel this constriction viscerally? Two,
Mm,
how does it operate on my feeling level? What's the feeling that I have? And three, what is the mental process? What does my mind start churning out? And I need to know that. I need to recognize that. So as soon as it starts, I'm able to put it out pretty much straight away. And I, do deep breathing, quieten my mind, think positively, start embracing love. In other words, think of a poison. You want to get the antidote in as quickly as possible. You don't wait.
yeah,
you know, if someone gets bitten by a snake, you get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. So it's the same. There is an antidote. We all have the poison of fear within us. It's the way we were brought up. It's a huge topic on its own. And as I said, we need to learn what are my I like to use the word default settings. Every computer, everything has default settings. We all have our own default settings. We all have our go-to. What's my go-to? Where do I go when I get upset? Where do I go when I'm afraid? Where do I go when I'm pissed off with someone? You know, we all have it.
Right.
And we need to recognize it. We need to know it. And we need to know, okay, what antidote works for me? All right. For me, it's deep breathing, relaxing, meditating, getting calm, but for someone else, it might be going for a run. For someone else, it might be doing crochet. For someone else, it might be playing a musical instrument. Get in the flow, basically. Get back in the flow. What works for you to get in the flow? I was talking to someone yesterday, and for him, it's running. Great. You're in this agitated state, you go for a run. It doesn't really matter what you do. I don't even care if you're a Christian and you want to go to church. If that's what works for you,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Right.
Whatever works for you to get you back into a state of peace, equanimity, love, understanding. And only then, when you've stopped all of that agitation, and clarity is restored, only then can you look at it, do the introspection, do the work, and go, right, that's what triggered me. I'm still susceptible to that particular trip hazard, which we all have. Okay, I know it. Sorry, But I think you've got to apologize to the person. I mean, I'm all for apology. I think if you really, you know,
Oh, yeah.
have done wrong, best thing is, and if you can't apologize in physical reality, just do it in your meditative space and learn and go, okay, I tripped up again. We're all human. When none of us are perfect. It's all about progressive perfection. I'm going to try a bit harder. I'm going to be a little bit more aware of that trip. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to walk on the other side of the road. And sometimes you've got to
Yes.
remove the
Yeah.
toxic people. If someone's just completely toxic and completely is tripping you up deliberately, well, maybe it's best not to have them around. But that's a huge subject matter. It's a great. I think learning to deal appropriately with fear is probably the most important thing because look, it will get pretty fearful, and this is part of my mission is that I want to prepare people as much as I possibly can because if you don't have presence of mind, you will make mistakes, and you'll be gullible. You'll be easily led, take the sweet, come join us. It's a very seductive uh, process. And that's what it's all about. They're just creating as much chaos as they can so that people will feel vulnerable. People will be looking for some sort of security, some shoulder,
Yeah.
by 2030 you will own nothing and you will be happy. That sounds pretty good to me if I've got nothing.
Yeah. I know, Adrian. It's kind of sad, right? To hear about this agenda, to kind of even contemplate the idea that people have those kinds of plans. Yeah, it's not the reality I live in, but it kind of feels very strange every time I hear it that people actually think that way. They plan. It's very strange.
How does one process, I think, is important.
Mm,
The ability to process one's baggage, to become free. Because as we said at the very beginning, there's no point in denying that we all have this baggage. There's no point in denying that we were all brought up. We are all part of it. That's why we're here.
yeah,
We're all part of this story. And as we, the way I look at it is this: as I eliminate my baggage, as I disengage and are less susceptible to the power of greed, the power of fear, the power of negativity, then that power is less,
right.
correct? In the world. I'm just one little person, but I'm one less person who is susceptible. Because if we're all feeding it, in other words, we're all making it grow, we're all, putting coals in the fire,
Yeah.
of course the fire gets bigger. And that's why the other saying is, what you resist persists. So, that's what Christ said, turn the other cheek. You don't fight. You never fight. Fighting is not the way to go.
Yeah.
You know, you make progress in the good. You focus on the positive. You focus on the love. You come from love, because as soon as you get into fighting, you're in negative. You're in hatred. You're in this altercation, us and them, polarity, blah 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 blah.
Right.
When you're in love, there is no polarity. It's not, like I said before, it's not like having an object. When you are in hate, there is an object. You are psychically connected to that thing. I mean, you see people, they get so obsessed about it. Like they did an interview in America last week.
Yes.
I can't remember the exact percentage, but a huge percentage, I think it was 60% of Democrats, said that that guy, it's a pity he didn't assassinate Donald Trump. Now, as I said before, I'm not partisan. I don't care about Donald Trump there, but to want someone who is a presidential candidate to be assassinated, that's a pretty sad story. Like that's
Right.
what a democracy is, to be able to disagree, to be able to go, well, I don't agree with you, but I respect your right to your opinion, and let's discourse it. Let's discourse it with dignity, with respect, with grace, with peace, with intelligence, because then we put the two together, the yin and the yang, the thesis and the antithesis, we put them together, we arrive at synthesis, which is how
Right.
evolution works. Yin, yang, opposite, synthesis. Oh, we've moved on. We've taken some of your perspective, some of my perspective, and we've created something that is bigger and better than both of us. But when I say, oh, I want to kill you because I disagree with you, that's just very, very
Right.
primitive
God.
and barbaric. It's just like, I don't like you, I'm going to kill you. Oh, yeah? Well, that's a very good solution.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's yeah, another thing that's hard to believe, right? It's really hard for me to believe these things, but I know it's out there. Thank you so much again, Adrian, for your
Thank
presence.
you, Valerie. Thank you for having me. It's been a delightful conversation. We must do it again.
Yeah, I love, I mean, that's what I live for. This is my sacred space. Yeah. Thank you
Good.
for saying yes to all of it.
Yeah.
So I want to mention your book again, Tao Tuning the Art of Flow. It will be on Amazon September 17th. So it'll be everywhere, actually, not just Amazon. So it will be released. And your website is adrianemery.com. I'll have there on the podcast notes as well. I also want to mention that you have a retreat. I love the name, Rustic Spirit. That's with your partner, Marianne. So you
Yes.
both host this retreat in Australia. That sounds so wonderful. I had to mention this here. So thank you for doing that too. So, Adrian, for now, I'll say goodbye to you for now, but we'll be in touch again.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for what you are doing for humanity. I think it is a very beautiful offering and a wonderful um, gift. Yeah, it's a wonderful gift that you give to the world and to people like me.
Oh my God.
I'm nobody in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't have a voice if it wasn't for people like you. I mean, I can write my books and stuff, but we need to get the word out there. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it and love talking to you.
Thank you for saying this. Oh my God. And I love this too. What's not to love about it? So, yeah, take good care and we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch
Okay.
again. Bye for now,
Goodbye.
Adrian.
Thank you.